Welcome to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.
Hello and welcome to the Landwards podcast. I am your host, Andy Newbold, and today I am joined by the Principal Investigator for the Hands-Free Farm Project and Senior Lecturer in Agricultural Engineering at Harper Adams University, Kit Franklin. Hello, Kit.
Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. And thank you very much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure. I have got very excited about the idea of being able to work you hard with questions today. So let's fire away. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I guess what I describe as fairly standard or typical background for an agricultural engineer in the UK. Born and sort of brought up on a family farm just outside Cirencester. It's quite a small farm, so my father actually sort of diversified and went into construction. So sort of an upbringing surrounded by farm machinery, construction machinery, and all the things that go with it. My eldest brother then, when he got to sort of leaving college after studying mechanization, wanted to be a contractor. So again, sort of set up a business as an ag contractor. So, when I was my early teens, there was lots going on with farm machinery, construction machinery. Despite the size of the family farm, we had quite a lot of kit about, and obviously that got me interested and excited about machinery, really.
A classic rural upbringing, to quote yourself, and you're very, very lucky to have had that as well. So why did you decide to become, what?
Yeah, I was just going to say, outside of just what set me up to be an ag engineer, I guess it was that classic rural upbringing, building dens, shooting air rifles, bike rides, ignoring my parents and going off for many hours of an afternoon into the countryside. Really,
that's illegal nowadays.
Yeah, apparently.
And you had no mobile phone either, or internet service.
I'm not as old as you, Andy. So I did have a mobile phone, but I had a mobile phone, but I didn't like to use it, and I certainly never topped it up. I had a mobile phone very begrudgingly, really. I was told I had to have one, but I never put any credit on it.
So. The irony, given your day job nowadays. Why did you decide to become an agricultural engineer then?
So as I sort of alluded to, all the machines around my sort of existence got me really interested in machinery. And it's really a passion of my family. My brothers, my father, they all love machines. They say we've got plenty of toys, big boys toys at home. And I'm dyslexic and struggle at sort of reading, writing, that sort of subject, but I was good at, I'm gifted at maths and science through school. So the sort of the school subjects of maths and science mixed with my sort of passion and interest for machines and diggers and dumpers and cranes and tractors meant that engineering was a sort of obvious choice. I had fancied myself as an architect because I liked design and drawing. But it was when I actually was a friend of my eldest brother went off to Harper, and I heard about this place called Harper Adams and this course called Ag Engineering, and I sort of thought, well, that sounded about perfect, really. And that was when I was around sort of 14 or 15, I think.
I'm going to just dive off sideways, and you can tell me to stop, and I'll apologise in advance. But you mentioned about being dyslexic and the fact that you were good at maths and physics. Do you feel that the dyslexia has held you back, or just taken you off in a different direction?
Very good question, Andy, and a question I'm quite happy to discuss, and probably one that I don't really talk about a lot. I don't sort of not. This is not trying to be critical to anybody, but there's some people who are very pleased to tell you that they're dyslexic, and I just kind of get on with it, really. I personally believe it made me I'm a very visual person. I can picture designs that I'm going to put onto paper in my head, fully formed before they hit the page. I'm very visual in my mind. Even the way I do maths is very visual. I literally stack blocks in my head when I'm counting, sort of thing. So my personal belief is that dyslexia has made me who I am. And if I wasn't dyslexic, I wouldn't be the engineer that I am, and I wouldn't have done all the things I've done. On the flip side of that, it makes life hard. I'm not going to lie. I'm an academic by accident. And one of the things that you're supposed to do as an academic is write journal papers and conference papers and obviously read and mark a lot of student work. And frankly, I'm not very good at it. I'm pretty slow at reading. I'm pretty poor at writing. So it's challenging for the career I've ended up in. It isn't great, but I believe it's what made me an engineer.
Yeah, and I think in that regard, it's probably not useful to view it as something which holds you back. It's probably much healthier to view it as you say, something which has made you into the person you are and is a fundamental part of you.
Yeah.
It's much healthier than some ridiculous label.
Yeah, it frustrates the hell out of me. I ask my wife. There's days where I do have a bit of a meltdown at 6 o'clock where I've not managed to achieve, a few paragraphs that I needed to write, and yeah, it's challenging. But yeah, as I say, the reason I do what I do, the reason I have the crazy ideas I have, the reason I'm good at speaking, I think, is because I'm not good at writing. So I'm good at standing up and talking. Yeah, so I am who I am, and I'm not really,
and let's celebrate that. As you say, it's been a stepping stone and a building block in terms of getting you where you are and what you're doing. So that's got to be a good thing. Just sort of stepping back towards Harper Adams and going to Harper Adams to do a degree in ag engineering. Leading on from that and what you studied at Harper, what was your route into the industry from that point?
So, well, I kind of have to touch on Harper a little bit to answer that. I turned up at Harper having done maths, physics at A level and design at A level, went into Harper to do ag engineering, signed up to the masters because I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to design big shiny machines. To be honest, going in, Harper has a really good connection with JCB, and that was forefront of my mind. Wouldn't it be great to get the JCB scholarship, end up there as a design engineer, working on fast track or something like that? They were the ideas going into Harper. And then what happened whilst I was at Harper is I actually gained a love of agriculture, not just ag mechanization and ag machines and ag engineering. And this is really critical for me and why I'm different to a lot of my now students. There are a lot of students who I lecture who do ag engineering and off-highway engineering who want to be engineers. They want to design and develop machines. And that's great. But what actually happened to me is I got really interested in crops and farming and what the machines are for, not just the machines in their own for themselves. So I got interested in the ideas of robotics and things like CTF, low pressure, direct drilling. All those sorts of ideas started to really inspire me. That it wasn't that rather than I ended up not just wanting to go and be so I have to be careful because I don't want to disrespect it, but I ended up not wanting to be a design engineer in a CAD office, just designing the next cultivator or the next tractor. By the time I left Harper, I had decided I wanted to change agriculture. And that was my journey. And not everyone's journey is the same, but that was certainly mine, is growing up on a farm. I didn't really love farming. I loved farm machinery. By the time I left Harper, I'd found a love of farming itself and agriculture itself. So then when it came to trying to find a job after leaving Harper, that kind of, I guess, made things a little bit more confusing because, as an engineer, there was certainly at the time plenty of jobs to go and be a design engineer and design the next cultivator. But that wasn't what I really wanted to do anymore. And then it just so happened that Harper had funding to do some ag tech work under the sort of Innovate UK agri-tech catalyst schemes. And I was approached by Harper sort of 4 or 5 months after I graduated and after I'd done some traveling around the world would I be interested in working on, as a design engineer, I have to say, but would I be interested in working on these projects that were looking at agriculture in a fundamentally different way? So things like hyperweeding, where we were looking at lasers to eradicate weeds, and also we were looking at working with Big Bale South and the Transstacker, looking at how we could make a Transstacker work in a manner that fitted CTF. So basically Harper came to me with, would I be interested in going to be a design engineer on these things that I found were a bit more revolutionary than the commercial design engineer roles that were out there. They were actually considering ag in a different way. So that's what I decided to do. I also decided that in order to change the world, as I kind of wanted to do, you needed to meet the right people, if you get what I'm saying. You needed to mingle with the right people. And I felt that Harper would give me the exposure to lots of people. Yeah. I mean, we get lots of politicians and industry leaders and whatever coming, visiting Harper, looking at what we do. And I thought, well, I'll get to meet some interesting people there. So that was what pushed me back to Harper as an employee, really. And I think, both of those sort of aims came true as I worked on some interesting things, and I certainly met some interesting and useful people who then helped me along my journey. So, we've touched on sort of hyperweeding and the Transstacker and some of the other bits and pieces. What sort of took you on from there, I guess, into your hands-free world, as it were? What was the stimulus? So obviously I was working under Simon Blackmore, who is the sort of godfather of ag robotics, as it were. The Don. And as a student of his, I used to question his ideas. Before I was working there, we used to have, in my master's year, we used to have sort of tutorials with Simon, and we get into fairly heated debates about these ideas of robots and what they could do for engineering and what they could do for farming. And so I developed this idea myself that I didn't really quite agree with his views of really small, tiny robots, but I kind of had grown this own idea in my own head that maybe we needed sort of robots that were smaller than commercial tractors, but they could still look like tractors and be smaller, maybe the sort of size of a T20 or something. That was always my thing, is that T20s didn't seem to cause compaction. Why don't we farm with T20? Why don't we farm with T20s anymore? Well, because we don't have enough drivers. If they could drive themselves, we could once again farm with T20s. And if you look around the world, the vast majority of the world is still farmed by T20s or T20 derivatives. If you look to India, Turkey, China, they're all farmed. Africa, they're all farmed with small little tractors. It's only Western Europe, Australia, and America that have gone for massive iron. Mm-hmm. So that kind of proves my point. It kind of, to me, it proves my my sort of thesis, in the sense that if we just had more people, we could still farm with small tractors. So that was the idea I had grown from Simon Blackmore's ideas of these really small robots. But the problem was I wasn't a very good robotics engineer. Jonathan Gill, who I worked with, so I used to do the mechanical designs, and Jonathan would do the mechatronics, electrics bit to make my designs move. He was very good at making flying machines and robots. So basically, between the two of us, it was like, well, we could take my idea of a small tractor, and we could take your abilities as making robots, and together we could actually farm with robots, which no one had done at that point. Everyone else had got stuck, with things driving around car parks, as I like to say. So, to try and answer your question, which I think was, where did it come from? Basically, it was my idea that had come out of this learning about ag robotics plus John's abilities together. We came up with this scheme, and then linking back to my further point is then, by meeting and chatting to all the right people, I'd met Clive Blacker from Precision Decisions, who was a good person to enable us to move that idea forward, because he was always up for trying new things. Sooner or later, something had to happen with Clive, as you say. Yeah. Let's fast forward. Tell us about your day job now. Okay, so in technical terms, I'm a lecturer 4 days a week. I run research 1 day a week, is how my time is supposed to split. Reality is it's much more blurred than that. But basically, I'm the administrator, I like to think, really, for Hands-Free Farm. I don't get to do any of the really interesting stuff. The team do that, and there is now a really good team working on the Hands-Free Farm. So I won't name any because then I'll forget some or something, so that'll be bad. But yeah, there's a whole team of engineers working on Hands-Free Farm. Sadly, I don't get to do the engineering. I have to do the admin, make sure the money's coming in, make sure we're buying the right stuff, make sure we're not annoying too many people at Harper with the things we do. Outside of that, I lecture, and I sort of, inverted commas, lead the AgEng modules at Harper now. So the AgEng specific modules within our broader engineering section, I sort of lead those modules, and obviously work with a great team, many, obviously all of which IAgrE members, Simon Cooper and David White, etc. Graham and Simon Woods. I don't have to mention them all. Again, I'll forget some. So, there's a whole team of ag engineers at Harper, but I'm sort of module leader on the majority of the AgEng modules now, and form that learning.
That's quite a seamless link into my next question, to be honest, which is, thinking about your life with the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, and that's also where we really met as well. What role does volunteering play?
Yeah, so to me, my volunteering with the IAgrE is not really volunteering in the way I sort of view the word volunteering. So I don't see that I'm a volunteer. I just see that it's part of my career. I'm a true believer, and I think you probably already tell from everything I've done and we've already discussed, that I'm a believer that you only get out of things what you put in.
Absolutely.
And therefore, if I want to get value from the IAgrE, I probably have to put in a bit of effort to get that value. So signing up to be on a committee, or, now being part of the executive, it's putting in the effort, but then it builds relationships, you meet people, etc. So volunteering to me sounds like it's a very selfless thing, and I don't see what I do with sort of IAgrE as being selfless, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, but you do give of your time, and you don't have to, when you give of your abilities and your talents for a greater good than just Kit Franklin. Yes, you may bask in the reflected glory, and yes, you may get some side benefits, but you don't have to do any of it, do you? It's optional.
No, but then nothing interesting comes from saying no, does it?
Absolutely not. Agreed. You're spending too much time reading Dave Gorman books.
Yeah, well, I'm not, because I don't read much because I'm dyslexic. Back to the start.
Sorry, but, audio books. Listen to him.
No, but you're right. Literally, when we started Hands-Free went mad. And the reason it went mad is because we spoke to loads of journalists and we did loads of interviews, and I just did not say no for 2 years, from 2016 when it kicked off through to sort of end of 2018. I never said no. I said yes to everything, and it eventually wore us out. And now I have to say I do on occasion say no, but it was like, Christ, the limelight's only going to be on us once in our lives. So this is me and John, I guess, I'm talking about. And it was like, let's just take it all. Let's go for everything, Yeah, let's make it work. Let's demonstrate a combine live at cereals. Why not? What could go wrong? It's mad.
Well, now you know what could go wrong, and your liver has never recovered, presumably. Anyway, again, you're quite good at teeing these up. Tell us a bit more about the Hands-Free Farm project, then.
So Hands-Free Farm, Hands-Free Hectare was great. We achieved something that no one else had achieved. We grew a crop entirely with autonomous machines, but that was limited in its scope, in the sense that we had a square, flat, 1 hectare field. And quite rightly, the criticism that we would receive would be, my field isn't square and flat, and it's certainly bigger than 1 hectare. So Hands-Free Farm sort of sets out to sort of solve those queries, really.
Yeah.
It's bigger in scale, it's bigger in scope. We have 5 fields, 35 hectares of land. We have odd-shaped fields. We have overhanging trees. We have telegraph poles. We have footpaths. We have banks, and wet patches and dry patches, all the things that a farm has. In fact, we have it worse than, you know, a lot of places. We've got one field that's been flooded for 3 months of last year. I think it was underwater. So, you know, it really is a challenge that we've got ourselves. So that's the sort of academic side of what we're doing with Hands-Free Farm. And we are, and just to finish off the academic, we are monitoring the economics of it and trying to work out if this is a valid way of farming going forwards. The commercial side of it, so speaking on behalf of Precision Decisions and FarmScan Ag, who are our partners. Obviously, Precision Decisions is now part of Map of Ag, but nonetheless, they are partners in that project and they are developing products. So, you know, by the end of Hands-Free Farm, we should be at the point of potentially offering retrofit autonomous systems to retrofit to tractors out on farms. So there's a commercial output of Hands-Free Farm, as well as the sort of academic showcase side of it, which is obviously bigger than it was previously.
So there is a commercial imperative as well, isn't there? Shall we sort of step back from Hands-Free Farm and look at the big picture in ag engineering? Bear in mind, you know, who's listening to the Landwards podcast. Where do you see ag engineering as a discipline going?
It's going to get more broad. Ag engineering is broad. It always has been broad. You know, I guess I would, you know, when I started being an ag engineer and studying it, I guess, you know, ag eng stretched from civil with drainage and irrigation through to mechanics of machines, hydraulics, and some basic electronics. And now, you know, you have to push that electronics into AI, robotics, data, power electrics in time is going to become more important for, you know, potentially EVs coming into our industry, you know, so it's just going to get more broad. I always say, and I've said to you before, Andy, I think that you know, agricultural engineers are what is now commonly referred to in engineering as systems engineers. You know, the sort of the modern term for what we do is systems engineering. So, you know, essentially ag engineers were systems engineers before systems engineers were invented.
We've always been integrators. We've always been integrating technology. We've always been a bridge between theory and practice, with the theory being physics in large part, and the practice being farming.
Yeah, 100%. And it's that thing of going, and that was kind of what we did with Hands-Free again. You know, we saw this. John was working with drone technology developed to make machines fly by themselves. We went, oh, look, that's really useful, reliable tech. Let's take that and put it in a tractor. Those people never considered tractors, but we did, and we put it in, you know. And that's kind of what ag engineers do, isn't it? We go, oh, look, there's a thing happening over there. We can pinch that and put it into our world.
We have a look at what's in the stingers in the yard and see if we can repurpose it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
At a very simple farmyard level, I think we're probably working slightly higher than that level. But so moving on from that, what do you think the key issues are which are facing ag engineering?
Oh, well, you know, same as humanity, climate change, lack of people, and the big old challenge that is the sort of looming climate and social changes that we face. Agriculture faces as an industry is going to require engineering to solve its problems, and then we as ag engineers need to ensure we have enough people coming in at the bottom end to solve those problems. You know, there's a plethora of problems to solve, and at the moment we have a limited number of people coming in the bottom end to solve them. And if you look at IAgrE as an institution, I think, you know, our membership reflects that in its age and experience levels, which are great, but we need to get some people in at the lower end.
Yeah, we need to feed people in, don't we, and encourage them in.
Yeah, which I guess has been, you know, again, arguably one of the greater achievements of Hands-Free is we've managed to put ag engineering into mainstream media on a few occasions. You know, we've been on the Gadget Show, we've been on the One Show, we're on the BBC News. So we've put ag engineering in the mainstream view, the vision of the mainstream, you know, society. Hopefully some people have been inspired to come into our industry because of that. Really, I think.
And I think talking about people coming into the industry, what advice would you offer to anyone heading into or considering ag engineering as a career?
Yeah, so if you're not like me from the normal background, get yourself onto a farm. Because if you get yourself onto a farm, you don't want to be a farmer, you want to be an ag engineer or an ag technologist or whatever. It doesn't matter. Don't just try and do that first. Get yourself onto farms and see some of the problems for yourself, because you'll soon see a problem walking onto a farmyard. You'll see that the grain store isn't big enough or quick enough to keep up with the combine that they've just invested in. You'll see that millions of things. You'll see problems all the time on farms, and those problems often require an engineering solution. So go and find what problem you want to solve, and that'll give you great context, because what makes an ag engineer not just an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer is that context. So if you want to be an ag engineer, go and get yourself the context, I think.
Yeah, no, context is king. Context is king. Content is king. Either way, context is king. Kit Franklin, Principal Investigator of the Hands-Free Farm Project and Senior Lecturer in Agricultural Engineering at Harper Adams, thank you very much for your time today on the Landwards podcast. This has been a fascinating insight. I've really enjoyed it. I have a feeling we could probably have recorded 3 or 4 more hours of this for the Redux version if anyone was interested. But no, it's been really good, Kit. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries, Andy. If you ever want me to come back on and bore you some more, happy to do so. But we'll save everyone at this point, I think.
There's plenty more things to cover. You haven't told me you haven't done your Desert Island discs yet, or discussed your luxury item kit. So at some point we'll have to come back to those things. Thank you very much, Kit Franklin.
Cheers.
For more information, visit www.IAgrE.org. You have been listening to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.